Well, this is Margaret Schlachter here from Mud Run Guide. I am with Adam Kimble, and we are talking about The Wheel, and we are on, what are we on, week 6? Is it?
Six, yep.
Episode 6. Just aired over this past weekend, and Adam's here to talk about what happened in the episode and some a little bit behind the scenes stuff, too. So we started out with you still in the jungle, and we got to see a little bit different side than what they've shown so far. But those of us that followed you during your run across America, we got to see that you're kind of a jokester and kind of a bit of a comedian. So, do you want to talk about when you caught the fish and you described to all of us this gourmet meal that you had just caught?
Yeah, so the timing on that was actually perfect because the night before that episode, what I've been doing is an hour before each episode, I'll do a Facebook Live, and then people can ask questions about the previous week or whatever, anything that we didn't discuss here on the show. And one of the things that I said was, every single time I got a fish in the Amazon, I did this little joke segment where I was like, today, and the Kimble restaurant in the Amazon, and then I would describe what I was eating. And I'd been doing that every single day. I was eating fish, and so I told somebody that I was doing that, but they just hadn't showed it. And then, lo and behold, on the episode, they showed me talking about that, and it was cool because, it's like we talked about before. This is it's a survival scenario. Things are pretty serious for the most part, and people are starving, and there's dangerous elements. But at the same time, what allows me in a lot of circumstances to get through those hard times is having fun and joking around and distracting myself from what's happening. And the same way on the TransCon, what was funny is I was in a tremendous amount of pain, wasn't feeling good, but as soon as we turned on the camera and started filming a video, it felt like all the pain went away for 2 minutes,
Yeah.
And so it was just one of those things where I wanted to try to keep it as light as I could because as you saw in other segments of the episode, a lot of times I'll get real emotional as well. So I just tried to have as much fun as I could, and it was nice that they showcased some of my personality this week because we didn't always get that in some of the previous episodes.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that because you and I talked before we started recording this and about the emotional roller coaster that you go through. I mean, for the most part, you're a pretty upbeat guy, pretty positive. In this episode, we saw a bit of homesickness sort of creep in. And so can you talk about those emotions that you had and how your food played into that?
Yeah. So first off, I want to explain the emotion a little bit. I mean, obviously, it's a tough thing. And, there'll be some people that'll see it and make comment. Usually it's my closer friends that are like, why are you crying all the time? And my response is, you have no idea what happens to your mind until you've been in the wilderness alone for 30 plus days. It's like, you don't think it's easy to watch it and say, oh, I wouldn't get emotional doing that. But when you're completely cut off from everybody that and all you want is just a little feeder, a little bit of information about what's happening in people's lives, until you go through that, you don't really know how emotional it is. So that's one thing. But then the other side of it is that, and we talked about this earlier, but I noticed it was palpable how noticeable it was when I would be at my absolute hungriest. It seemed like the emotion really got turned up in those moments. And it's funny. To me, it serves the idea of the interconnectivity of the body and the mind and your awareness, right? It's like we have to physically feed our bodies. We have to feed our souls through whatever it is that we need in our lives. And for me, when I wasn't physically feeding my body, I could feel an emotional lack as well. And then I would do my best to use the mental side to overcome both of those things, So it was just like it's a crazy. I mean, the human body, as we know and as you know, is an absolutely insane thing and what it's capable of. And to me, it was really those kind of things gave me things to reflect on while I was out there. Thinking about, wow, it's crazy how I can't control my emotions when I'm insanely hungry, and so I have to try to mentally go to a place where I can, calm it down and just continue on. So really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and it sounds like, too, that you kind of learning the importance of community throughout the whole aspect. because, humans are communal creatures.
Yes, absolutely. That's right on. And one thing that was really cool, we talked about this as well. They didn't show all the contestants meeting before the start of the show, but just by meeting for half a day, we were together for, I don't know, maybe 4 hours, right? Just meeting the other contestants, hearing their stories, what was motivating them to potentially, try to make it 60 days. Mm-hmm. That alone, even though we had no idea what was happening to them, I didn't know when Kat went out, I didn't know when Joss went out, etc. And just knowing, though, that they were going through something similar, it created this bond, this communal feeling. And rather than 6 people competing against each other to try to accomplish this goal, it was 6 people hopefully doing it together and seeing each other at the end.
Yeah, so I want to talk as well about Lindsay this past week, because, she struggled with, it seems like food has been her struggle the whole time. But it seems like, and we were talking about this before, that she really had a breakthrough this week where she stopped seeing, which goes into what you just said, is she stopped seeing this as sort of a quote unquote race or competition, and kind of it changed to like in kind of like this sort of journey she's kind of changed it into.
Yeah. Lindsay is, I love watching her week in and week out, because she's a warrior, and I actually was instantly connected to Lindsay when we met before we started, because they don't play this up a lot, but they play more of the model portion of what she does. She's a model, but she's also a stunt woman. And the third thing is she's an endurance athlete. She does Ironmans, and she's run some ultras before as well. So me and her connected on that level of, and the fact that she referenced a race tells you that that's how her mind thinks. She thinks in terms of endurance and those kind of things. And watching her in that moment, that to me was a very, very special moment. And I mentioned that I thought it was kind of the coolest moment really since when Josh went out, when he had that realization about his family. Lindsay had this realization that, hey, this journey has changed for me, and it doesn't mean that I'm giving up. I'm going to see it all the way as far as I can see it. But I recognize now that I see why I'm out here and what I was supposed to learn. And so now she's like, it's not a race. I don't see it as a race anymore. I see it as a way to dedicate this to my grandfather's memory and see how far I can take it and how much I can make him proud, And that to me, that was like, I'm glad that you noticed that, because that was a really powerful moment of the episode, and hopefully other people saw it that way as well.
Yeah, and moving along to Luke. Luke is like a master builder. I mean, for a guy that I think he's a plumber, but his shelter this week, and for anybody that hasn't seen this episode, I'll put a screenshot in with this as well. Luke has built, I mean, people have lived in lesser structures than what he built in a day. So what did you think? I mean, we won't know if you make it to the mountains or not until later on in the show, but watching that, what did you think about his structure he built?
It's that, I mean, to me, there's a lot of things that make this show cool. Obviously I'm biased, but one of the things that I think is great about it is seeing starting with 6 different people. Now it's down to 3, as we know, but seeing how people approach things differently. And Luke's shelter building and his capabilities with building things are a perfect example of that, because I am not a handyman. I wish I was, but that's not in my blood, in my DNA. My dad has that, but I guess I didn't pay close enough attention to what he was teaching me. But it's amazing to watch. I mean, Luke built an incredible shelter, and I told you, I think, so one common misconception about this show, people that don't actually know anything about the show will catch an episode and say, wow, why did Discovery cast these people who are terrible survivalists on a survival show?
Yeah.
And they don't understand that the premise of the show is that we're amateurs and we aren't survivalists, right? But the fact that we're all amateurs, I think Luke is the closest to a survivalist of the amateurs, just based upon his skill set alone. And so, yeah, it was amazing watching him build that. And I got to tell you this, the funniest thing of the night watching the episode for me was during that scene, a close friend of mine, his name is Jeff. Jeff texted me, and they had just shown me putting together a shelter where I basically just held up a tarp and like put a few things in it. And I in the episode I say that I'm all about making just a serviceable shelter. So Jeff, my friend Jeff, texts me and he says, Adam, and then in quotes, I just want a serviceable shelter. And then he goes, Luke, and then he attached an image, and it was like this village, this giant village with all these buildings and stuff. And I thought that was perfect, because it's like, yep, I had this like shanty, and Luke had the most amazing shelter you could build in the wilderness. So it was funny to see how much different the two of us were in that regard.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just blown away as I was watching it. I was calling my fiance. I'm like, come here, see this thing. This thing's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, from the structure of it was really good. With I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how long it took him to build that, because I built a shelter in the Amazon that was the best shelter I built, and you couldn't see. They showed it from a few different angles. You couldn't see it all that well, but it took me a solid 8 hours to build it, because I was using these big logs, and it was not nearly as stable or as well done as Luke's. But I'm curious to know, especially in a colder zone, how long it took him to cut down all those logs to get them symmetrical and the right size and length and everything, and then put it all together. It must have taken him a while.
Yeah, and then I guess the last thing that we'll touch on this week, and we mentioned it before, is we saw Shawns' departure at the beginning of the episode. But he, as you said, he's actually going to be on Discovery Channel's The Wheels Facebook page doing a Facebook Live tonight. So, yeah, I guess there's not too much to say about it, other than if you've been watching the show and you want to know more about what happened with Shawn, because we didn't really find out in the show. They said, we think it might be this, but we didn't really kind of see the conclusion of the medical team, the evac and all that.
Right. Yeah, I think that'll be a good thing to go check out. Even if you don't see it while he's live, you can go and rewatch the video afterwards. It saves it on the page, and that'll be really interesting. The thing that I'm most looking forward to asking him is what the process was like from the time he got put on that stretcher to him getting evacuated. You know, did I'm sure they put him in a helicopter, took him somewhere. Did he go straight to a hospital? What did he find out? You know, when did he next go to the bathroom? All these things. So that to me is what I'm most curious about. But regarding Shawn, he's another one. I mean, for me, it's knowing what I went through and then seeing what these other contestants have gone through. Shawn is a monster. He's an absolute warrior, and I think he showed just how strong the mentality of the military can be with his background as a Marine. And I thought it was interesting that he basically said, I wasn't going to tap out, like I wasn't going to give it up, so someone else had to do it for me, and they knew that his health was in danger, and going another 30 days or whatever it wasn't worth him endangering his.
Cool. So Adam, thanks for joining us again this week, and I'm looking forward to seeing what next week brings. I mean, it sounds like from what we saw on the show, you're not going to be in the wetlands for too long, but excited to see what kind of happens. And it looked like we saw in the preview something happens with some of your equipment.
Yeah, something potentially disastrous happens to a very important tool of mine. So tune in and check that out. This will be episode 7 coming up on Friday, and then only one episode after that. So we're down to the final 2 episodes.
Well, we will be tuning in, and again, that's on Discovery Channel at, check your local listing depending on what time it's on, but Friday nights.
You got it. Thanks a lot, Margaret.
Thanks, Adam.